the wireless crackling to life at 6 o'clock sharp, the smell of carbolic soap hanging heavy in the scullery, the sight of lace curtains, starched and perfect, framing windows like watchful eyes. If you grew up in a British home during the 50s and 60s, you'll remember when houses had rules that seem utterly bizarre today, unspoken laws that governed every corner of domestic life. These weren't just quirks or preferences, they were sacred commandments that separated the respectable from the rough, the proper from the common. Break one and you'd face everything from a clip round the ear to complete social exile from the neighbors. Your house wasn't just where you lived, it was your fortress of respectability, your badge of belonging, your statement to the world about who you were and where you stood. Every room had its purpose, every object its place, every moment its proper behavior. Stay till the end. One of these rules might finally explain why your nan always did that peculiar thing with the front door. Walk into any respectable British home in the 1950s and you'd immediately know which room was forbidden. The front room, or parlor as some called it, stood like a museum exhibit behind its closed door. This wasn't just another living space. This was the family's crown jewel, their shrine to respectability. The psychology was pure post-war Britain. After years of rationing, bombing, and making do, working families finally had something nice. And by God, they were going to preserve it. The three-piece suite, usually bought on hire purchase over 2 grinding years, sat wrapped in protective plastic covers. The carpet, often the family's most expensive possession, remained pristine under strategically placed rugs. Children learned early, you didn't play in the front room, you didn't eat in the front room, you certainly didn't put your feet up or sprawl across that sacred sofa. This room was for Sunday visitors, the vicar's wife, or perhaps the insurance man if he was particularly important. The irony was heartbreaking. Families saved every penny for furniture they barely used, creating beautiful spaces they were too terrified to enjoy. Your mum would dust those ornaments weekly, adjust those antimacassars daily, yet the room felt more like a shrine than a home. But it wasn't really about the furniture. It was about dignity. In an era when your address defined your worth and your front garden was your calling card, that pristine parlor proved you'd made it. You weren't rough, you weren't common, you had standards. The tragedy is how many families spent decades tiptoeing past their own best room, preserving it for special occasions that rarely came. Meanwhile, real life happened in the cramped back room. 8 people squeezed around a table meant for 4, while the beautiful space gathered dust behind its firmly closed door. The reaction was always instant, the sharp intake of breath, the immediate, almost violent removal of the offending footwear, the muttered words about asking for trouble or tempting fate. In British homes of the 50s and 60s, placing new shoes on a table wasn't just poor manners, it was practically a death sentence. This superstition ran deeper than most, rooted in the grim realities of working-class life. In mining communities, when a man died in an accident, his boots would be placed on the kitchen table, clean, new-looking, never to be worn again. The image burned into collective memory. New shoes on a table meant someone wasn't coming home, but it spread far beyond the collieries. Factory workers, dockers, railwaymen, anyone whose livelihood carried risk, carried this fear into their homes. Your nan might not have known why she panicked when your new school shoes touched the dining table, but the dread was real, inherited through generations of women who'd lost husbands, fathers, brothers. The ritual of shoe shopping became fraught with tiny terrors. New purchases went straight to the floor, the bed, anywhere but that dangerous flat surface. Even shoe boxes were suspect, better safe than sorry when dealing with forces beyond understanding. It sounds absurd now, doesn't it? But these weren't ignorant people. They were families who'd survived wars, economic collapse, genuine hardship. When life felt precarious, you didn't take chances with luck, good or bad. Every small action carried weight. Every choice might tip the balance between safety and disaster. Watch an older relative even today. There's often still that flicker of unease, that automatic correction when shoes meet table. Some fears run deeper than logic, embedded in muscle memory by mothers who genuinely believed they were protecting their children from invisible dangers lurking in everyday objects. 6 o'clock. The pips. Then that familiar voice. This is London calling. In the 1950s and early 60s, the BBC didn't just broadcast. It conducted the symphony of British domestic life. The wireless sat like a throne in the corner, usually on its own special table, demanding absolute reverence when it spoke. Tea time aligned with the light program. The news commanded complete silence. Children learned to freeze mid-game when those serious tones filled the room. Sunday mornings meant the religious service, and God help the child who dared interrupt with requests for breakfast during the prayers. The wireless wasn't background noise, it was the heartbeat of the home. Families gathered around that glowing dial like ancient tribes around a fire. The warmth came not from the valves inside, but from shared experience. Everyone heard the same jokes on The Goon Show, gasped at the same cliffhangers in the afternoon serials, sang along to the same popular tunes. The wireless created a national conversation happening simultaneously in millions of front rooms. But it was more than entertainment. It was authority. When the BBC spoke, you listened. News wasn't questioned, programs weren't criticized openly, and scheduling was sacred. If Listen with Mother started at 1:45, then 1:45 it was, dinner plans be damned. The hierarchy was absolute. Adults controlled the dial, children endured whatever was chosen. No channel hopping, no alternatives, no escape. If father wanted the cricket commentary it was, for hours. The wireless taught patience, respect, and the art of shared compromise in ways modern families can barely imagine. Then television arrived, slowly at first, then like a flood. The wireless's reign ended not with drama, but with the quiet click of families turning toward a flickering screen instead. The phrase wasn't just a saying, it was legislation enforced by every adult in sight. Children in 1950s. British homes lived under a regime of silence that would horrify modern parents. Speak when spoken to. Stand when adults entered. Never, ever interrupt grown-up conversation. Break these rules, and you discover just how much trouble a cheeky child could find themselves in. The architecture of childhood was built around invisibility. Good children moved like ghosts through their own homes, padding silently upstairs, slipping unnoticed past doorways, occupying the smallest possible space at the family table. You learned to read adult moods from posture alone, to sense danger in the quality of silence, to disappear entirely when tensions rose. Don't be cheeky carried the weight of ultimate condemnation. Cheekiness covered everything from asking why too often to suggesting a different approach to anything. Children who questioned, argued, or expressed opinions were branded difficult, willful, needing correction. The correction came swiftly, a sharp word, a clip round the ear, banishment to bedrooms until you learned respect. Yet this wasn't just Victorian hangover, it was survival strategy. In overcrowded homes where privacy was impossible and nerves stretched thin, adult authority maintained precarious peace. With no central heating, limited space, and everyone piled together, chaos lurked always one tantrum away. Children's silence brought domestic tranquility. The psychological impact was profound. Entire generations learned to swallow their thoughts, to prioritize others' comfort over their own expression, to equate love with compliance. But they also learned observation, patience, and the art of reading unspoken communication. Modern parents might recoil at such strictness, But these children often grew into adults who understood boundaries, respected authority, and knew that sometimes listening teaches more than speaking ever could. Sunday morning meant transformation. Workday clothes disappeared into wardrobes, replaced by garments that felt foreign against weekday skin. Stiff collars that scratched, polished shoes that pinched, dresses that rustled with every movement. This wasn't just church attire, this was armor for respectability, worn even if you never left the house. The ritual began Saturday night with preparation bordering on military precision. Shoes buffed to mirror brightness, clothes pressed with geometric perfection, hair styled into submission with Brielle cream or setting lotion that created helmets of respectability. Children learned early that Sunday appearance mattered more than comfort, possibly more than breathing. But Sunday best wasn't really about clothing, it was about transformation, about becoming the person you aspired to be rather than who you were Monday through Saturday. The postman wore his one good suit. The factory worker donned his wedding tie. Housewives emerged in their special frocks, reserved for occasions of importance. The psychology cut deeper than vanity. In communities where your address, your job, your accent marked your social position, Sunday best offered weekly redemption. For one day, everyone could look prosperous, dignified, worthy of respect. Class distinctions softened when everyone appeared in their finest armor. Children suffered most under this regime of uncomfortable transformation. Forbidden to play rough, restricted to careful movements, warned constantly about stains or tears. Sunday became a day of beautiful imprisonment, where looking good mattered more than feeling comfortable. Yet there was dignity in the effort. Families with little money invested enormous care in their Sunday presentation. It was defiance against poverty, declaration of worth, insistence that circumstances didn't define character. Even if you couldn't afford much, you could still look like you belonged somewhere better. The coal fire wasn't just heating, it was the solar system around which family life orbited. And like any solar system, it had strict laws of gravity that determined who sat where, when, and for how long. In the bone-chilling reality of unheated British homes, proximity to that glowing grate was currency, power, and privilege all rolled into one. Father claimed the fireside chair by absolute right. Not because he was cold, everyone was cold, but because he was father, the breadwinner, the man who'd worked all day to afford those precious lumps of coal. His chair faced the fire directly, close enough that the heat might actually penetrate his thick work clothes. Nobody questioned this arrangement. Nobody dared. Mother occupied the secondary position, usually perched on a hard chair pulled close enough to feel warmth, but never blocking Father's heat. She'd knit or mend in this spot, her fingers moving automatically while her body absorbed whatever warmth trickled past his bulk. The children, they huddled on the hearth rug if they were lucky, or shivered on the sofa if they weren't. The fire demanded constant attention. Banking it at night required genuine skill. Too little coal, and you'd wake to frozen pipes. Too much, and you'd waste precious fuel. Someone had to master the art of riddling ash, adjusting dampers, coaxing maximum heat from minimum coal. Usually Mother, adding fire tending to her endless list of domestic duties. But there was something magical about those coal fires that central heating could never replicate. The hypnotic flicker of flames, the satisfying crack and hiss of burning coal, the way warmth seemed to wrap around you like an embrace rather than simply warming the air. Families actually gathered, drawn together by necessity into a tight circle of shared warmth. When oil heating arrived, something was lost forever. That forced intimacy, that democratic suffering, that nightly ritual of fire worship that had united British families for centuries. Hot water was liquid gold, and the bathroom schedule reflected this precious reality. In most British homes of the 50s and 60s, the weekly bath wasn't just a routine. It was a carefully orchestrated military operation requiring precise timing, ruthless efficiency, and absolute cooperation from every family member. Saturday night was bath night, and the pecking order was immutable. Father went first, claiming the privilege of genuinely hot, clean water. Then Mother, making do with slightly cooler but still acceptable conditions. The children followed in strict age order, oldest to youngest, each inheriting progressively grayer, cooler water, until the youngest child practically bathed in tepid soup. The immersion heater, when it existed, was treated like a temperamental deity requiring careful worship. Switch it on too early and you'd waste electricity. Too late, and Father would be washing in cold water, a domestic catastrophe of epic proportions. Most families calculated heating time to the minute, balancing fuel costs against family harmony with mathematical precision. Hot water was rationed with wartime severity. A quick wash at the kitchen sink handled daily hygiene. The bathroom was reserved for serious business, hair washing, proper scrubbing, the kind of thorough cleaning that required genuine submersion. Children learned to wash efficiently, to treasure those few minutes of warmth, to never, ever waste hot water. But there was luxury in that weekly ritual that modern instant hot water can't match. The anticipation as the tub filled slowly, the genuine pleasure of sinking into heated water, the family coordination that made it feel like a special occasion rather than mere maintenance. When central heating and instant hot water arrived, something precious disappeared. That sense of warmth as reward, of comfort as achievement, of simple pleasures requiring genuine effort and making them infinitely more satisfying. Net curtains weren't window dressing. They were the fiber optic cables of 1950s British suburban communication. Behind every pristine white panel sat the neighborhood's intelligence network, tracking comings and goings with the precision of MI5 and the dedication of professional gossips. The twitch of a curtain spoke volumes. Its stillness said even more. The art was in the positioning. Too obvious and you'd be branded a nosy Parker. Too subtle and you'd miss crucial intelligence about who was visiting whom, when, and why. Experienced net curtain operators developed techniques worthy of master spies. The casual adjustment that offered perfect sight lines, the strategic flower arrangement that concealed observation posts, the innocent window cleaning that provided legitimate surveillance opportunities. Every street had its chief intelligence officer, usually a woman with time, curiosity, and an unshakable belief that community morality required constant monitoring. She knew which husband came home too late, which wife received suspicious deliveries, which teenager was courting trouble. Information flowed through the network with remarkable efficiency. A curtain twitch here, a garden fence conversation there, and suddenly everyone knew Mrs. Jenkins had visitors at inappropriate hours. But this wasn't just nosiness. It was social control in its purest form. The knowledge that every action was observed, catalogued, and potentially discussed kept people on their best behavior. Children walked straighter, knowing Mrs. Robertson was watching. Husbands thought twice about stopping at the pub when net curtains tracked their homeward journey. The system provided genuine security too. Burglars faced an army of vigilant watchers. Elderly neighbors received subtle monitoring. Community standards maintained themselves through the quiet pressure of constant observation. When privacy became more valued than community watchfulness, when people retreated behind closed blinds and privacy fences, something important was lost. That sense of belonging to something larger, of being known, watched over, and genuinely part of a living neighborhood. Tea wasn't just a beverage, it was liquid civilization, the solution to every problem, the glue that held British society together, one careful cup at a time. In the homes of the 50s and 60s, tea service followed protocols more rigid than royal ceremonies, and deviation from proper procedure could mark you as irredeemably common. The milk first debate raged with religious fervor. Proper families, or those aspiring to be proper, added milk after the tea, claiming it prevented the delicate bone china from cracking under thermal shock. Working-class families, drinking from thick pottery mugs, added milk first for practical reasons, but defended the practice with surprising passion. Both sides viewed the opposition as barbarians lacking fundamental understanding of civilization. The ritual mattered as much as the result. Warming the pot. Measuring tea leaves with precision. 1 per person, plus 1 for the pot. Timing the steeping with religious accuracy. The proper handling of cups required genuine skill. Curved, pinky fingers marked you as pretentious, but clumsy grip suggested poor breeding. Handle turned just so, saucer held correctly, never slurping, never gulping, never treating this sacred beverage as mere thirst-quenching. Biscuit protocols demanded their own expertise. Digestives were everyday fare. Rich tea required respectability. Garibaldis suggested genteel aspirations. The timing of dunking, brief enough to soften, quick enough to prevent catastrophic collapse, separated the cultured from the careless. But tea meant more than etiquette. It was comfort after bad news, celebration during good times, peacemaking after arguments, hospitality for visitors, strength for difficult days. The kettle's whistle promised solutions, the warming cup offered solace, the shared pot created community. When instant coffee invaded British homes, when tea bags replaced loose leaves, when speed trumped ceremony, something profound was lost. That daily ritual that transformed mere liquid into liquid love, served with care and consumed with gratitude. These weren't just rules. They were the invisible architecture of a vanished world, the unspoken constitution of communities that knew exactly who they were and where they belonged. In those cramped, terraced houses and suburban semis, these rituals created order from chaos, dignity from hardship, identity from uncertainty. Think about what we've lost in our rush toward convenience and individual freedom. The front room taught delayed gratification in an age of instant everything. The wireless created shared experience in our fragmented, personalized world. Children's silence fostered observation skills that smartphones have destroyed. Sunday Best reminded us that transformation was possible, that we could become better versions of ourselves through simple effort and care. If any of these rules stirred something deep in your memory, if you remember the scratch of Sunday Best or the luxury of warm bath water, then you've touched something precious that's slipping away from us. These weren't just quirks of a bygone era. They were the daily rituals that built character, community, and belonging. Maybe you remember your nan's panic over shoes on tables, or the reverent silence during the 6 o'clock news. Perhaps you can still feel the hierarchy of the fireside, or recall the sweet anticipation of that weekly bath. These memories aren't just nostalgia, they're glimpses into a world that knew the value of shared experience and common purpose. Let us know in the comments which rule resonates most with your own memories. And if this journey into Britain's domestic past has touched something in you, then subscribe to keep these stories alive. Because remembering where we came from helps us understand where we're going.